Hi, right now we're going to talk about using the APA style of citing your sources both within your paper and on the reference page. And as you can see, I took this information from your textbook, The Quick Access Brief, so that you can find this information whenever you need it. And in fact, make sure that you have a good um, reference guide for using APA style. It'll make a big difference in how easy it is to do this important part of your papers. So, what is a source and why cite it? A source is any form of information that provides data, ideas, examples, concepts, or evidence. And focus in on that ideas section. It's not just things that you directly quote, it's also things that you paraphrase or summarize. Sources can be primary or secondary. A primary source is original to the writer. So that means it can be letters, diaries, novels, poems, short stories, original reporting, findings from research studies, speeches, journals, and so on. It can also be field research that you conduct yourself, surveys or interviews, for example. Sources can be secondary if they report, describe, comment on, or analyze someone else's original work. Someone other than the primary source relays the information, adding a layer between you and the original source. So that would be if a newspaper person, for example, um, explored the research conducted by a university professor. That would be secondary source. And the research professor's original report would be primary. So, what's the difference between scholarly and popular sources? There are lots of differences. One of the major ones is that scholarly information is found in databases, and popular is found in databases but also through general searches. The audience for scholarly material is usually other scholars or experts, researchers or students, people who are experts or want to be experts in that particular topic. The audience for your popular um, uh, sources are the general public, people who have an interest but not necessarily expertise. The purpose of scholarly research is different. It's to provide cutting edge information supported by research. And as for popular, it's to entertain or to translate expert information into something that the general public can read or and be persuaded by. So the authors of scholarly work are usually scholars or people who are professional content experts. And popular sources are journalists or freelance writers, hobbyists or enthusiasts. When you see scholarly work, you will always see citations within the body of the essay and bibliographies to show sources of the ideas. Usually in popular sources, you don't see that. Sometimes in newspaper articles, you'll see hyperlinks that will take you to other articles or research, but generally speaking, no bibliographies or reference pages. Popular information appears in popular books and periodicals, blogs, personal or informal websites. And here's where I want you to pay particular attention. Robert Reich was the Secretary of Labor under President Bill Clinton, and he has a wonderful blog where he focuses on economic issues. He has advanced degrees in economics. He was the Secretary of Labor. He's a very smart man. He teaches at Stanford, I believe. His blog is credible. If I were to write a blog about economic issues and you were to cite my blog, people would giggle at you. Make sure that your sources are credible before you use them, and be particularly aware of credibility when you go to popular sites. So, why cite your sources? There are two reasons. First is to give credit to the source of the idea or the quotation. It's the honest thing to do. You shouldn't take credit for someone else's words or ideas. And also, the more credible your source, the more credible you can be perceived to be. It's the difference between citing me on economic issues and citing Robert Reich. Okay, so there are going to be two parts to your citations, the internal part and the reference page. The internal part happens within the body of the text, and it's a clue to let the reader know that the information that you're using comes from a source other than you. The reference page is a listing of all of the sources that you use within the body of the paper, and they work together. As your reader comes across a source within the body of the paper, if he or she is curious, he can go to the reference page and seek out that source directly. What's the difference between a bibliography and your reference page? If you were asked to write a bibliography, you'd be asked to list all of the sources that you looked at, including the ones you rejected while you were doing research for this topic. The reference page lists everything you referred to within the body of the paper. So keep that in mind and don't include anything on the reference page that you don't make reference to within the body of the paper. Let's go to page 273 of your quick access textbook. We're going to look at a couple of the, we're going to look at the general format of this page and several of the citations. What do you notice about the format? Well, one thing is that the word reference is centered and is in the same font size as the rest of the copy. Everything's double spaces, just like the rest of the paper. Nothing is bolded. The only things that are in italic are the title of the article. So references, the word references is not bolded, underlined, or in italic. There's no extra space before or after, and you use a hanging indent. If you use Microsoft Word and you don't know how to generate a hanging indent, go to Format, Paragraph, and in a drop-down menu called Special, select Hanging, and it'll do the formatting for you, so you won't have to get crazy doing tabbing. And each reference is listed alphabetically. As you can see, the first 6 have an author, and they're listed alphabetically by the last name of the first author listed on the source. The next one has no author, and it's listed, and it falls into that spot because Dragon follows Downs alphabetically. So they're all listed alphabetically. Okay. When you use the APA Psychological Association style, you identify the source from the author's name and the copyright year. If you have within the body of the paper, if you have no author, you use a shortened version of the title. If your source has a page number, you include that within the internal citation, within parentheses, and you use P period before a single page number and PP when the material you have falls on more than one page. If you've used the MLA style before, this is different. In the MLA style, you don't use the P or the PP. Okay, so you separate the parts of the parenthetical citation with commas and the end punctuation always follows the citation unless it's a long quote set in a block style. All this information appears on page 236 through 240. Okay. So, why use a database if you have one? You do. As a student at Northwood, you have access to databases, and we expect you to use them. We expect you to use them because they're reliable, they're maintained, they're up to date, they're easy to use to find the best and most applicable sources. Think about how many sources you would come up with if you did a Google search on climate change. Now think about how you could limit those sources if you used a database. You could limit it to only peer-reviewed journals. You could limit it by how recent the information is. You could limited by keyword, you could expand it by keyword. You could get only great sources, or you could get 700 million sources, and then you'd have to look through all of them, or you'd pick the first three, which might not be the best approach. So if you have access to a database, use it. A DOI, we're going back to page 273 again. A DOI is a digital object identifier. It's a number that is assigned to a journal article, whether it's online or print. And if you look at the third citation down, Dickerman, Christensen, and Curl McLean, you'll see it has a DOI number. And if you look on page 248, figure 15.2, you'll see how it appears on a database. It's separated out, and it makes it easy for you to find. So sometimes you'll find a DOI number, and it's important to include it. Sometimes you won't find a DOI number, but but you might have information from a database. When you use a database, just let me back up for a minute, the database usually gives you how to cite the publication accurately for APA, for MLA, for Chicago style. It does it for you. So that's another reason why to use a database. In this case, we have an example from a database, and if you look at the Bates example, you'll see how it's done in real life. Look at the Gator example on page 274. This is interesting because it comes from a website, and it tells you the retrieval date. The retrieval date is important because sometimes, especially on websites, information can be corrected after you look at the site, and if it has been corrected and your reader goes back and finds that you apparently made a mistake, your retrieval date will tell them that no, you didn't make a mistake, you cited it correctly at the time that you went to the source. Your company's website, let's say that you're looking at websites, and you are for your final project. When you cite your website, think of the website as a book, and the article title is the tab. So if there's an About Us tab and you're going to cite from that, About Us appears in the article title. This is complicated, isn't it? Well, it is. But remember that nobody expects you to memorize this information. You have a style guide, and you can contact me, and there are other really good places where you can get help, like Nightsite, KNIGHTCITE.com, or Citation Machine. So don't be worried, it'll be fine. Thank you very much.